Welcome back to The Line. We learned this week that UNM President Bob Frank will not seek a second term. Instead, the Albuquerque Journal reports he will become the director of the Center for Innovation in Health and Education within the Health Sciences Center after his current contract ends next year. Times are tough at UNM right now, certainly. There's a hiring freeze and potential looming budget cuts. UNM holds part of New Mexico PBS's license, but the university does not have any role in our editorial process for New Mexico in Focus. Now, Daniel, I got to say that. You know,
who's running? Who's running? But who's running? You said he's not running for a second term.
That's right.
Not you, the media. He's not. I didn't know this was an elected position. I didn't know you had to declare.
It does sound like it.
Declare your candidacy.
But here's the thing. He is the sixth consecutive president to serve 5 years or less at UNM. Sixth. That's amazing. Can you have stability at your state's premier university having that kind of turnover?
I think some people from New Mexico State may take umbrage with that.
That's a good point.
That's
and they would have a right to do that.
You know, I think at the end of the day, you know, it's clear there's a couple problems with being president of the University of New Mexico. One is you are in the spotlight.
Yeah.
The president of New Mexico State isn't always in the spotlight. You are in a political tug of war. I mean, this is the epicenter of politics. You've got Democrats, Republicans, progressives, conservatives, you name it, pulling it at this place. Bob Franks is a good man. I've met Bob Franks many times. I think that Bob Franks, in my opinion, haven't talked to him in a couple of years. I think Bob Franks came back to the University of New Mexico being a homeboy, thinking I'm gonna help make this better. I think he realized what a quagmire UNM is, and I think he's frustrated. I think he's upset with the fact that common sense isn't so common anymore. I think that he's looking at the internal battles that are going on, from David Harris being interviewed about the amount of money being spent and just walking away from the interview, to the fight with the health science division saying, you know, we're going to be our own, to the regents, to not getting people appointed to the Board of Regents. I mean, it's just been an unbelievable, and it's been interesting because UNM has kind of become its own political juggernaut, whether it's Jamie Cook siding with Governor Martinez, or Republicans that are on the Board of Regents siding with Bill Richardson. It seems like it's become its own black hole that is just sucking the life out of the state.
Did you pick up on that? With that last bit Dan just mentioned, it is a bit of a quagmire over there. We've got a lot of people moving pieces.
It's an opaque quagmire. Also, we don't really know what's going on.
Can you explain that?
You know, there's a lack of transparency in this whole process, and I've been digesting it in the past couple of days. And yesterday there was an article in the daily paper about it, and I thought, well, you know, maybe this is just something he had mixed feelings about, and he moved on. He always wanted to start a public health school at the Health Sciences Center. And then I got to the last paragraph in the article, and it said, part of the exit agreement is that the regents and Frank said they would not speak ill of one another.
Right.
So what is going on? I think that makes it look like there was a real split between the regents and the president, and that doesn't bode well for future revolving doors.
Right, I can imagine. Let's get to the point where the new job he's going to be having, of course, over at the Health Sciences Center.
Same salary?
Same salary, $350 large. Yeah.
Brand new salary. So one of the things, I mean, Didi and Dan have hit it right. The Health Sciences Center has become its own thing, and the number of political stashes, people who have been placed there at very high salaries with no job description, is remarkable. And if you go to the County Commissioner Wayne Johnson, who says, you know, we've got $90 million sitting there and we have no accountability for it, there's no transparency, but the people of Bernalillo County are paying for that. I think all of this sounds highly suspicious, and it does sound to me like, I'm with Dan, I haven't talked to Bob Frank, I think he's a good guy, hometown kid, I loved it. But I think he just saw the writing on the wall. But I also think that perhaps he knew something, and in order to stay quiet, he goes over to this place where he gets 6 months off before he begins work.
That's true, I forgot about that bit, the 6 months. Laura Sanchez-Rivey, you know, interestingly, most presidents go on to teach in their field of expertise if they have a continuing career at UNM, but that's not the case, and at a salary commensurate with that department. You know what I mean? That's the big part here. To Janice's point, the $350, and no one's yet sure what the job is because it hasn't really been fleshed out by Paul Roth, and
But that's not uncommon. There are several
Okay,
people that
yeah.
have that position with
Yeah.
no job description, and you'd love those salaries.
yeah, absolutely. But what does this do to campus-wide thoughts about these things? Do you see what I mean? Does this start a precedent that could be very problematic for the university going down the road? I mean, presidents making jobs for themselves, and
I think it's very problematic for them to, not just down the road, but now for them to be doing that when they're facing cuts, and they know that cuts are coming. They've already, had discussions on campus with various groups about the fact that they need to cut somewhere.
Sure.
People concerned about whether their salaries are going to go down, whether there's going to be, layoffs, reductions in force, which a lot of universities are dealing with right now around the state. Interestingly, what you talked about with neither side speaking ill of each other as an attorney, and I do some employment work in education, that's a standard. Anytime you have a separation agreement, that's standard in anything they do. And I do a lot of executive separations in private sector. That's just standard. So I don't read into that as an attorney at all. I mean, I could see how somebody would say, oh, well, there must be something. If neither side can say, you include that regardless. Anytime you're going to separate, neither side can
Especially
speak
if
ill
he's
of the
going to
other.
stick around there, too.
Exactly.
You don't want someone walking around
I mean, if
campus
they're
saying,
getting
horrible
something,
president.
right? I mean, you want to include that, and both sides have an interest in including that clause in the language. But I think this is the ultimate golden parachute for a president of a university. I mean, you see golden parachutes in the private sector all the time, but to have that happen at a public university that has, is under a lot of scrutiny, is under a lot of pressure in terms of the budget, it does, I think it's a problem. And I think it's a huge problem for the university.
Let me
Optics
ask you
are
this:
just not good.
what do you make of that? We don't know if the man is the perfect person for the job, but we'll never know because it wasn't put
Right.
out there.
Wait a minute,
for
wait a
anybody,
minute. What is the job? First
Right.
of all, there is no
But here's-
Center for Health Innovation. That's yet to be created.
Right.
So, I mean, we don't know whether he's the perfect person
But remember,
for the
you got to
job.
remember something too. Dr. Franks, who again,
No,
Dr. Frank is who before I've said is a nice man. One of the interesting things that came about Dr. Frank after Dr. Schmidley, Dr. Schmidley was very focused on legislators, getting out in the community. He was a very gregarious person. He had a really good personality. Dr. Frank, in some of my conversations with him early on, we had been talking about. So I don't think I'm speaking out of school. They were talking about some stuff out in Rio Rancho, and kind of the gist of the conversation when we were like, we got to call this legislator. He was like, why do I got to call these people? Right? He was like, so why am I calling these guys?
Right.
And I don't think it was I'm better than them. I think it was I think he felt when he took the job, the right thing would win. I don't think he felt politics was going to be
Well, and I
the
think in
ultimate
a lot
decider.
of other, I think, having not gone to school, I did not go to school here at all for any of my degrees. But other universities in other states are that way. You don't have to pick up the phone and call a legislator to make something happen. You don't need to press the flash and go to every single legislative reception.
Yep.
And here, it's just different. You do have to do a lot
But the
more.
sad thing about this, losing Dr. Franks at this point, is I want a president who wants to truly take care of this university, like Gary Carruthers does for New Mexico State University. I want a president who wants it to be better.
Did you feel he was on the right track
I
with his
did.
presidency?
I
Okay,
actually
yeah.
did. And, and there were calls early on that he was arrogant and the legislature didn't like him. And, but I thought he was doing the job. Some of the picky little things that were bothering me was making sure that there were enough labs for the required courses.
Sure.
As a parent, that really ticked me off. It's not 100%,
paying
but
for,
it's
yeah.
better.
I think having a Mayfield guy that could run the university, a New Mexico high school grad that went to school here, understood the landscape, I had a lot of hope
It
for.
seemed perfect on paper. That's actually the point I was getting at, Dee Dee. How do you let a guy like this wriggle away? It seems to me if you've got someone you believe in the next decade or so, you find a way to work it out. But I guess it just didn't happen.
Well,
So what about the regions?
He has to want
Well,
to.
I think that's where the scrutiny should be, on the regents right now, rather than the president. The university seems to be on the right track. Graduation rates are up. Remediation is improving for our poorly prepared high school graduates, and they're playing in the innovation game, which they weren't doing before. So those are all good things, but the regents, everything kind of gets back to the regents here, and that's...
Well, they're the all-powerful universities. I mean, don't make any bones about it. It ain't the legislature. The governor appoints those folks,
Or
and
the president.
they literally run the university. And there's been some interesting appointments at the University of New Mexico. There's been some interesting folks that have made it through multiple governors that have been on the Board of Regents now almost 12 years. And at some point, you got to realize that, in my opinion, when you're on something like a Board of Regents that long, pretty soon you start thinking you're the Board of Regents.
There you go, right there. When we come back to the line, we'll discuss a controversy over a neighborhood association boundary between downtown Albuquerque and the Bareilles neighborhood.